We've got a couple things we want to do. Did anyone look at stuff for this week? No? Okay, well, week 3, let me just show you. Week 3, and I'll just zoom this up for ladies at home as well. So we're dealing with week 3 of the course, and like everything, there is a Adobe Spark that you can go to. And I encourage you to do that because I actually take the time to put them together. And I think they're a wonderful resource. And this guides you through the things that I'm thinking about this week for class and the places that you want to go. And if you scroll through it, you can see that there's a reading that you're going to want to do. That's down here. Organizing and outlining what you think and what you're going to talk about. So it starts to get us thinking about how we're putting that together. What I want you to do for next class. Here's something for next class. For next class, I want you to grab a piece of paper. So bring it with you. Don't do it online. Put it on a piece of paper. Oh, I guess you could do it online as well. But I want you to think in terms of introduction, 3 points, body, conclusion. And I want you to just put down a few words on that piece of paper based on the topic for the speech that you're going to be doing later on this month, your introductory speech. My 3 life lesson things so far, that's the basic talk. I mean, I can't remember actually what the topic is, but it's something, 3 things I've learned so far. Yeah. And you're using those 3 things to introduce yourself. Well, that's really weird looking. You're using those 3 things to introduce yourself. So I want you to start thinking in terms, at this point, I want you to start thinking, okay, what are those 3 things? You're not locked into anything here. Nothing, you're not locked into anything, but I want you have to start thinking. And if you haven't started thinking about it, now's the opportunity. So what are those 3 things that you're going to do that you're going to say my life lessons so far? And in order to say, well, my first thing is beware of friends. We've already had some of these things today, right? Well, what's the example that you can give? Very short thing that's going to bring that to life. Let me tell you a story. So you got 3 of those. How are you going to introduce this? What's the basic of the start going to be? And what do you think in the basics of the conclusion are going to be? So just a few words to get your mind starting to pull it together. And so that's what I want you to bring with you next class, just so we can get a sense of where it's going. This chapter that's online, and you can see it here if you're at home, you can click on it, not now, go and click on it later. But go and take a look at this chapter and start looking at this chapter, because it starts to literally go through all that material, and it starts to give us a sense of what we need to do. Now, some of the materials in there don't apply to you because I've selected the basic thing you're going to do. So there's things that are already out, but there's other times in your life where you'll be speaking and you're going to have to start thinking of these things. So there's a lot of pieces there that might be useful. But what I'm really interested in, and where we're gonna take this, is hold on, let me go back. Is we want to really start thinking in terms of organizational styles. Really hard to see here. Organizational styles. So when we start thinking about a speech, and this is an area, so as you're looking at it, it's all useful, but this organizational styles of how you're going to put a speech together is something you pick, something you decide. And there's different ways of doing it. So you want to be aware, you want to understand that so take a look at that. We will obviously talk about it as well, but that's one of the big places where I want to go this week as we're thinking about it. So these notes are good. You might be saying, oh, there's so much to read. As always, there are some nice examples of how to outline your speeches in the back, different types. Is it a must to do it that way? No. Are they nice examples of the way that some people have done it? And again, you can open up. Yes. The more that you can give yourself just a basic little outline of where you think stuff is going, knowing that you can change it as you're doing things, at least you have a starting point. And that's the important part of an outline, is just getting an idea, okay, what do I want to work on? And your mind will constantly be working on it. So then it's just a matter of starting to fill it in and then starting to say it. Even if you're walking around and saying, okay, what am I going to do? You've all got phones, put on the voice memo. You could almost write an entire speech on voice memo. Just experimenting. Oh yeah, I've got this really thing. Okay, this is what it's going to sound like. Let me tell you about this story. And let me voice memo it. If it just comes to you, just voice memo it. It's yours. Find the way that works best for you. Remembering that what you don't want to do, the number one thing to not do, is produce a speech that sounds like a term paper. You don't want, it's so easy to do because that's what you're used to creating. Is term papers. Not your fault, but that's what you write. You write written exams, you write essays, you write presentations that you write. And then you write it up all into a PowerPoint. And then you stand there and you read the things. That's what we do. But your speeches must not sound like a term paper. People read the term paper, now you're presenting the term paper. It's a different thing. So it's something to keep your mind subtle, but it's something to keep your mind on. So this is where we're going. Any questions about that? No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Okay. Before we get there, though, there are two things that I didn't. It's in last week's notes, but it's not in this week's notes. And so I just put them on the top because we didn't talk about it. And it's just two really basic yet fundamental things to think about as you're putting together a speech. And it's important as you're creating a speech to not only be thinking about the words you're using, and remember, it's the words, it's the way you look, it's the way you stand, it's the way you move your eyes, it's the way you move your hands. All of these things become part of the speech. Now, this model that I've put up here is called the Shannon Weaver model of communication. If you're a communication student, you've probably heard of it. If you've taken me for any classes, you definitely will have heard of it because I talk about it in all my classes because it's just a fundamental thing we need to think about. You all participate in a version of this model in every piece of communication you do. And the basic idea why I'm bringing this up is because it offers us some opportunity to think about, especially when we're outlining a speech, especially when we're starting to prepare a speech, we're starting to think about a speech, to think about the entire speech, not just the words, but as I keep saying, you want to practice to think of all the pieces that are also going into the speech that are going to be communicating with your audience. So the Shannon Weaver model works very well because this might be you. You're the sender of the message, and this might be me. I'm the receiver of your message. If you're doing a speech, you're going to stand up and you're going to do a speech. We're going to be sitting in the class. So you're sending these ideas to us, and us will receive the ideas. And that's the way all communication works. You talk, someone listens. Then they talk, then you listen. You're watching TV, someone's presenting something on TV, there's a show, you're watching it. So they've sent it, you've received it. Movies, SMSs. Does anyone SMS, or am I the only person who uses SMS these days? I'm it. Actually, I send SMSs to people and they go, no one SMSs. I say, dude, what? You're like the only person I've ever got an SMS from in the last year. They'll also say, you're the only person who seems to have an answering machine on their phone as well. Like, do you listen to those things? Like, absolutely. Huh, they'll say. Okay. Well, either way, we constantly send, so WhatsApp, whatever, messaging. It's all, our whole life is about sending something to people and that they receive it. The problem is we don't just send and receive. There's a lot involved in that process. And one of the big pieces that's there is called encoding. And then on the other side is decoding. So when you're creating a message, so you're creating a speech and you're going to have some stories and you're going to have some ideas, and why I keep saying you want to sound a little bit happier, because everything you're doing is forming that message. Like, what are we talking about? Is this important? Is it funny? Is it not important? And this is when I say vocal variety when you're talking, because you can change the way people are thinking about what you're doing and what you're saying. So you can take them on a trip, take them on a journey. But you don't just say stuff. The stuff you're saying is packaged. You're attaching meaning to things, which is a really big problem, because you might think of something in one way and the people you're talking to might think of it in another way. Oh, I went out and I went to this really great restaurant. It had wonderful, looking curtains and really big carpets. And you can go to get that. Had all that. And you might go, yeah, I really don't like that look. It's tacky. So how you say things and the examples you use all become, you're creating the way people are going to understand the idea. The problem is you do all that as you're putting together your idea. You really embed it with meaning and ideas, with the hope that the people who are sitting there receiving it uncode it the same way you coded it. So you've used images of things, like you've all got dresses on, right, of some sort, or pants or something. How many times have you gone shopping with a couple people and you come out with a dress on and you're showing, you go, oh, what do you think of this dress? And someone goes, oh yeah, that's really nice. And then someone else goes, it's not nice. But you think it's really nice, but they don't think it's really nice. Have you ever had that happen? Like, at least once in your life, right? So this is the same thing when you're talking, because you're using examples and things that you think are good and that make sense to you and that you understand. But those things that you're using in your presentation to bring meaning to it might be interpreted by the person who you're talking to in a totally different way. And by them interpreting what you're talking about in a different way, they might say, this doesn't apply to me. This doesn't, this person doesn't know me. I don't agree with that. I don't see it that way at all. There's all sorts of things can happen just in the putting the content together and the way you choose to present it. And this is really important with examples, because we're going to see it in a second. I'm going to show you a talk, and he uses a couple of examples. I think it's this talk. But if you don't know what the examples are, and he uses them as he's trying to present stuff, if you don't get the examples, then when you decode it, you go, he's not talking to me. I can't relate. So then as the person who's receiving the message, it doesn't make sense to you anymore. And you kind of go, you tune out because you don't understand. It's clearly he's not talking to me. So this is what I always say to students: when you're going to use examples and things, don't think me, think your audience. So sometimes people say, oh, and they'll start doing a talk and then they'll talk something about Islam. And I always find it weird, because it's like you're explaining Islam to the class. Like, I hate to say it, but you ladies probably all live Islam. I don't, but I've been here for 22 years. I got lots of Emirati friends. I get it. I'm well read. I get it. So you don't have to explain it to me either. So then when someone starts explaining it to me, I kind of go, they don't get it. It instantly makes me go, I get it, but I instantly go, why are they explaining something to me that I know? Like, why are they making the assumption that I don't know, likewise, or that you don't know? So that has an impact on how you think of it. It could just be a small thing like that. And you might say, oh, it's not a big deal. I can get over it. But as soon as you start thinking about it, it's sitting in the back of your brain. The same way that we encode, and this is the problem with this model. So let me I'll get to the problem in a second, because it forgets something. But not only do you have to be thinking about how you're saying things, and will my audience understand it the way I want them to? And if they won't, then you might have to explain it. But there's also something that happens in this whole process, and you can see there's the word noise. Well, this noise exists on both sides of your presentation. So we got up and we did, your 20-second presentations. Excellent. And hold on. And Rima said, I fell asleep. I zoned out. Well, that's noise. So you as a presenter need to also, so not only are you thinking, okay, I've got to put together this product, I've got to make sure that I'm using ideas that are going to fit with my audience, so they're going to get the same thing that I think. And don't forget, you know your topic really, 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 really well. So how can you reduce it and slow it down and make it work? I did a talk on that once at TED. It was an excellent talk. TEDx Dubai, second year. Freezing and thawing of ideas. It was only a good speech. You can go watch it. It's like not my best ever effort, but it was good. But noise gets in the way of the message. So you could do all this excellent encoding and then someone zones out. I zone out. You yawn. Your phone buzzes. Bzz, bzz. Then you look at it. You've now missed the speech because you're looking at your phone, reading the phone. You don't know where it's going. So your receiver, the people who you're sending it to, they can have noise. You can have noise in the midst of your thing. There could be physical air conditioning noise. There could be door noise. Like that. And that's not just noise. She's got like a ultraviolet thing. She's not only spraying it, but it's got ultraviolet. Weird. Noise gets in the way, interrupts your talk, and then suddenly you're not on track, they're not on track. So noise is a big problem. This basic model works really well as you start thinking about planning your speeches. And again, it's thinking about someone's always going to say, yeah, but I know someone who can get up and they can just talk about it forever. Your mother, I don't know what your mother does. Maybe your mother's a lawyer. Maybe she runs a boutique. Maybe she stays home and takes care of kids. Maybe she's a poet. I don't know what your mom does. But whatever she does it extraordinarily well. And I'm pretty sure if your mom's a lawyer or running a business or bringing up the kids, she can talk about that topic forever. Likewise, if your dad's, running real estate or a banker or an economist or doing whatever he does, I'm sure, or your brother who might love cars, or maybe your sister loves cars, maybe you love cars, I bet you can talk about that forever. And so when people say, yeah, but they can just talk about it, those people who can talk about something forever, that's the only thing they ever talk about. And so when you say, yeah, they can get up and they can just do it. No. Ask them now to talk about something like, the space mission to Mars. They can't talk about that because their life isn't the space mission to Mars. Their life is the car or economics or medicine. So when you live in something, you can talk about it because you've been practicing that over and over and over again, constantly think about it your whole life. So you can always talk about those things. And that's when people say, oh, no. Those people know that stuff. Their problem is now they just have to get it into a bite-sized morsel and not talk in a way that's over our heads. So back to where we're going here. We send the message, we have to encode it, put it together so that people who we're sending it to can decode it and get exactly what we said, which is hard. There's tons of distractions going on at the same time. And this is the best part. This whole model, as it's written here, here, and here, this model, as you're looking at it, is just one message, but we don't send one message at a time. So you send the verbal message, you send your eye message, you send the way you're standing message, you send your hand message, and your job ultimately becomes that all of the messages that you're sending at the same time complement each other. But it's very possible, if we're not thinking about our stage presence and what we're doing on the stage of the presentation, if you haven't thought it through, it's very possible that parts of what you're doing are going to conflict with the general message that you're sending, and you want it to all work together. So maybe you want to have a big shrug, like, so what do we know? And your voice, you're posing a big question, and then you lean forward and say, there's one solution. So everything, your body, the movement, your voice, all working with the words to encode, hey, this is important, this is a solution, this is where I'm going. And the person who's listening is decoding it that way because it all speaks together, and you keep it kind of simple. So it's important to remember that this process is happening all the time. And this is why I constantly say, you want to plan stuff out, you want to think about it, and that thought process can be all over the place. And then when it comes to doing your speeches, especially these 4-minute ones, not the ones that in class, because I don't give you any time to prepare, but your nerves start to go away. That you're practicing those and you're thinking over and over and over again, okay, what do I look like? How am I standing? How am I looking? What's my face look like? Am I smiling? Am I not? Now, if you're wearing a mask, that changes everything. But if you're online, if you're not doing it, that's a whole different thing as well. So there's lots of things to consider, and you want to control them all. It can sound daunting. It's not. It's just a matter of being aware that we're doing it. And that's when people are talking and they twiddle their hair and they undo their shaylas and then they adjust their abayas, or guys do the same thing. Guys are even worse. They're scratching all over. It's like, really, dude? Like, what are you doing? Right? Yeah, you see, yeah, exactly. I don't have to say anything more. Use it. Aha. It's like, the way people stand. Are they slouching? Or they walk? Do their clothes fit well? Do they not fit well? It sends a message. Doesn't mean that it's the correct message, but it can send a message, and you will interpret everything. You get into an elevator and someone smells of nice perfume, or they smell of too much perfume, or they smell of no perfume. That all sends a message. You suddenly feel, oh, this person, this person, this person. And if they smell like a perfume that you really like, or you've had a great experience with, suddenly you smell that perfume. It's like that person takes on a whole different, oh, it's the same perfume that my favorite aunt wears, and my favorite aunt is such a fabulous person. And suddenly you're thinking about your aunt. And so all of these things start to play into it. The very first class, I said, I said in the other class, I hope I said it in this class, maybe not, that you might find yourselves doing a presentation. Well, the visual presentation, the word presentation that you're doing, they need to match. And people always say, oh, I've got to put all this stuff on the presentation. No, presentation is you and a few things to help augment it. If you want them to have a whole ton of literature, give them the literature, the class, that matches everything. And always make sure you use the back of the paper. So if you're giving someone a handout, because you know what happens, right? And I said this in the other class. Did I say this in this class? No. You give people a handout, and I advocate that. So I might say you're going to use them, and you say, well, I want to give people a little bit more information, but is there room to put all the information up like this? Like, this is a horrible slide if I was actually presenting something. These are just notes for you to have. But if this was, it's horrible. Like, there's stuff that doesn't need to be here and that you can't read. Ultimately, I would just give it to you. But if I'm giving you a handout of information that should follow the same format, don't leave the back blank, because when people get pieces of paper, they always do this. They're always looking at the back. Put something, it's real estate, it's free. Like, this is a blank canvas. It's now, I've wasted it. So there's all, again, and what's that do? That's the decoding, that little bit of message about you and your presentation. You've thought things through, you care, you're giving us this stuff. Again, it all starts to play through. Problem, as I said, is we don't send one message at a time, we send many. And we have to always be thinking about that. It doesn't make it hard, but it's something we have to think about. The other model that I use, so keep that model there because it doesn't necessarily work completely all the time, Shannon Weaver, but it's good in our minds, is Laswell's model. Because what's missing from this model? What doesn't this model have? Like, just look at it. It's like, okay. It's like, okay, they decode, there might be some feedback. There's always feedback too, by the way. Feedback is when people are sitting there like this, or their heads are up in the sky, or it's okay, you can keep doing that. Or they put their head on the table, right? What's the feedback that sends you? They let out a big yawn. What's the feedback that sends you? It's like, it does you in, right? So this model doesn't talk about the single most important thing that your talk needs to do, whatever talk it is. Single most important thing. Laswell's model does. This model doesn't. So I just combine the two of them always. Because there's one thing that every talk has to do. Every presentation you do has to do. Even if it's an introductory presentation. It needs to do what? It's the last thing on Laswell's model. You got to have effect. What's the effect of what I'm doing? I want them to know me more. So you've got to be thinking, well, what am I trying to do with this talk? If it's an introductory talk, it's introduce them. It's an introductory. If it's an informative talk, I want to inform them on something. If it's a persuasive talk, I want them to do something. any talk, what am I trying to do with my talk? What's the effect I'm trying to have on my audience? So again, you want to be thinking about all the pieces that go together in what you're doing and be thinking, okay, what's the effect going to be? Is this going to work? And you might be 3/4 of the way through working on practicing and then realize, yeah, that little bit's not going to work. Get rid of it and put whatever works in. That's the beauty. It's your talk. It's your thing. It's your baby. So that's a nice word. You're bringing life to this presentation. Make it awesome. Make it amazing. You own it. And like we say, you're just following the patterns. I'm looking at the stuff. I'm also listening to the content and saying, how does it go together? But really, I'm just looking at the stuff. Does it all work? That's what we're looking at. And of course, the content matters too. But in a presentation like we're doing in 4 minutes, you never get into big detail on anything. There's no time to get into big detail. So it's those small details. How have you made it relevant to the class? That's what becomes important. So it's just an activity that you can take forward. So this becomes really important. Again, as you're putting stuff together, you want to be thinking, how is this all going to work? Questions. Food for thought there, but you might have a question. It's okay. I want to show you this talk. Let's see if it'll work. I hope it'll work. I love this talk. I love this talk. Let's see. I don't hear anything. It's on. Okay, let's see. Why don't I hear anything? Settings. Here. Okay, so maybe not muted. Okay, let's stop sharing. Let's see, does it play this way? Okay, hold on a second, ladies. Let's see. No. So why? Okay, hold on a sec. One more setting needs to be changed. Hold on. So this is another lesson when you're doing stuff. So when we came in before class started, I spent some time making sure that I changed how everything plays out, but I forgot one of the things. So as I always say, don't let that get you nervous, but just always in your mind. So when I usually go and do things, I have like a sticky note somewhere. Did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? And I check them all. The problem when you go from place to place is that usually sometimes there's people doing it for you and whatever. So you always want to make sure that you've got it sorted out. And don't panic. Don't panic. If you're doing something and you can keep talking through your presentation while you try and figure it out, excellent. But whatever you do, don't panic. The only way you can keep talking through your presentation is if you know it. Because suddenly now it's broken the chain. It's like, oh, I want to show you this little video, and then you can't show the video. It's like, oh, so you just got to relax. I know what I got to do. It can be one of two things. And if you can't show the video, you don't show the video. I think it's going to work now. Let me just see. Yeah. So in this case, the zoom needed to be adjusted, but also because within the zoom, I'm playing a file. The file is playing off my computer, so it needs to be adjusted too. So the computer also had to have the playout adjusted. So again, it's like with everything, just knowing that, okay, I can sort this out. And if you can't, move on. All right, I want to play you this first little speech. It's kind of an introductory speech of sorts. Ladies at home, you'll be able to see it, I hope, and hear it. If not, go to and play it out, but hang around. It's the first thing, it's pretty short. It's about 3.5 minutes. Maybe it's 4. Does it say? It's 4 minutes. So, but his speech is probably pretty short in there. So first of all, it's short. I want you to be, every time you're looking at speeches, I want you to be looking at them from a critical perspective, saying, okay, what does he do well? What does he not do well? And what can you steal from that speech in terms of inspiration, in terms of presentation, in terms of organization? You're looking at all that. You're thinking vocal variety. You're thinking of the non-visuals. You're thinking of the content. And be thinking about how has he organized it? What's the conclusion and how did he get there? And think, especially in this one, the role of the story. The role of the story, because it's all about, stories are a big thing. Your job when you're speaking is to get your audience to love you and to be able, I can relate to you, I can relate to you through your stories. You don't want to tell them too much, but you want to tell them enough that they can go, and they can fill in the rest in their head. Go, I totally know what she's going through. That's important. And the more you can do that in a talk, and the more you can win your audience over, you win, because then they really start listening to everything you're saying. Those people who use examples and things, stories and stuff that don't fit anything, people just go, it's just a speech. And we've all been to those speeches. They're just not good. As I said right at the beginning, lots of people do speeches that aren't good because they haven't thought about it enough, or it's just created for one audience and they're trying to take it everywhere. So it's a little bit of thought. You can take any product that you've put together and reform it to hit any audience. So what do I do to try this every now and then? A couple times a year, I'll take this exact class, something I'm teaching. Usually they're harder than this. Go teach it to kindergarten students. Same stuff, same videos. Teach kindergarten students what I'm just teaching you. Now, obviously I use different words. Obviously I do it slightly differently, but it's exactly the same content to kindergarten students. Any lecture, it doesn't matter. I just find the class, hey, can I come and talk to you about advertising and maybe a little bit of Raymond Williams theory, and maybe talk about this Shannon Weaver model and stuff. Same class. So when you can do that, and if you get comfortable with it, I mean, little kids, they're merciless because they have a zero attention span, right? And they'll tell you this is boring. So you've got to know right away, I've got 12 seconds to keep this going. Then I've got to pivot, and I've got to pivot, and I've got to pivot, but I've got to get my content in. So be thinking like that. And as I keep saying, you've got all these classes, just keep practicing. You'll be golden. So I want to watch this little talk. Do we need to turn off some lights? So his whole speech was really about giving, doing something, doing things that matter because you don't know that they're going to matter. That whole story, getting to that conclusion, give what you can now. Don't wait till you've made that $1 million. Whenever. If you can help someone, if you can be, as he said, work in a soup kitchen, be a mentor, we all have something to give. And it might seem insignificant to you, but it's going to make a big difference to someone else. And the story he used, which was real, was the dog and the shoes. As he said, as he got that letter, that's what led into his conclusion, his last bit. You know, he was upset, so he made out at first, but that's what she recognized after. That was the thing that she wrote about. Someone even got me my shoes. He won. So when we look at this as a speech, this has a lot of elements we want to play with. What we don't know in this talk is what got edited out. So I don't know. I haven't seen an unedited version. All TED Talks are edited. There's always edit, and we're talking serious editing. When they're doing it, there is 5 people on screens live editing it as it's going to tape, and then they do another edit after it's done. So you never see a TED Talk that is exactly as it happened. They're all cleaned up. And in fact, I know there's one talk that I went to that was excellent, was really long. And then when I saw the video, it was really short. I'm going, well, so I had to watch it. So what did they take out? It's like, whoa, they took out like a huge portion of the talk so that it fit better together. Okay, you just don't know that. But the point being, from an organizational perspective, this is a pretty decent talk. This kind of works. From using, I mean, is this, do that, you get an A? Not necessarily. Talk at a slower pace, use examples that make sense, lead into a conclusion that sums it all together and brings us back to what we're talking about. That all becomes really important. Could he have had, did he have a decent introduction? I don't know, I'm not quite sure what the introduction was. I think that's what they took out, right? But elements of that talk work really well. Slow down, connect with your audience, use examples. Do you need a PowerPoint? No. He used props. Props can be just as good. The fireman stuff. Be you, be real, breathe, pause, keep going. And so I think this talk becomes a really nice one just to get us thinking about what we're going to do. Could all of you do this talk today? Yes. You're all there. Okay, a little bit of practice, still think what you're doing, but you're already well on your way to doing what he did and better. So I think we're in a great position thinking about all of those elements. And when we remember going back to this sender, receiver, encode, decode, he used Lex Luthor, foot race. What was the other thing? He used something else. He said something else. There's only the two? I thought there was a third. Things. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the scout salute. Again, that's classic sender receiver model. If you encode this to mean, hey, I'm honest and I wouldn't lie to you, and you don't know what that means, I mean, you can put it together, you're not stupid. But why do you have to put it together? You don't want people to put anything together. You want to tell them exactly what you mean and use those things that connect it so that there's no question what you're talking about. So in that sense, if he was doing this presentation to us, that's a failure because he's now put three things in that you're kind of left going, huh? So it's important to think about those things. So, but that's the whole point we show these talks, is to give us the opportunity to be thinking about the stuff we're doing here in class. And that's it. And really your goal, and I know it sounds a little hard, I'm going to take attendance and let you get out of here. But I know it sounds a little hard, and it's easier for me to say that you might be saying, easier for me to say than for you to do, or easier to say than do, is that you gotta let go a little bit and just have some fun with trying this stuff. And I said this at the very start of the class. These are the best opportunities in your life to try something that doesn't work. And I'm a huge fan of the epic failure. I love epic failures. I do them all the time myself, which means you tried something, you thought it's going to be amazing, I'm going to do it, and then it totally didn't work. But you put in so much effort and you tried, and it's not, I mean, we all put in effort, but what you put together was a really good idea, and it should have happened and come off and pulled together, but it didn't quite happen. But clearly there, so I'm a big fan of trying that stuff. This is the environment to have an epic failure, because an epic failure doesn't mean you get a fail. And I've had people who try some pretty crazy stuff and still do really, really, really well. But what we're trying to get away from is the lessons we've learned as classic ZU presentations and others, and build on our classic ZU, the new classic, and start building some of that. It's hard, but you can do it. And it's just a matter of saying, you can do it, I can do it. And in this classroom setting, you have the opportunity. And my thinking is you just want to use it everywhere. So, all right.